I accidentally brought this up at a city council meeting because I was so dumbfounded by these figures that I kind of blurted out. Actually, I didn't blurt it out, somebody blurted it out for me. I had shown it to somebody else, and she said, well, how about Jim Adler's figures on, and how much water you're losing? And I don't know. and they said, what's Jim Adler know? And I gave them my figures, and the superintendent of public works said, oh, that's awful. I said, you mean you don't? I mean, don't you take the amount of water that you send out of the plant and then subtract the amount of water that you're billing to see how much water actually gets to the faucets? No, we don't do that. I said, well, if you did, you'd see that 65% of it was going into the ground. And it was a shock for me to find out that they didn't know about that. And then it occurred to me, of course, that they were heavily getting into diverting this extra 2 CFS from the river in order to make up for the amount that they were losing in both the transmission and the distribution lines. And that because they couldn't find the leaks were going to increase. And there was going to be a continuing need for more and more water, which means that they would be applying for more rights out of the river if they couldn't fix it. So we started asking the obvious question, what are you going to do about this? What will the city do to keep from having a constantly increasing need for more water? We never got an answer. Fortunately, and this is where by this time I was stuck, because I had been asking all of these questions of the city and getting no response. And going to the Water Resources Department, I thought, you have this notion, if you haven't been involved in environmental stuff, that there is somebody who is keeping an eye on all of this. That the state regulates, the state takes care of these things. And if you get to the proper department and you talk to the right people, they'll say, oh, of course, we'll fix it. Well, I didn't have that experience. I ended up at Water Resources, and the people would say, the people that I would talk to would say, yeah, that's really awful. They really should do something about that. They should fix their pipes before they get more water. I said, well, how are they going to do it? Well, we can't do it. It's a water right. Well, so they are allowed to pour all of the water into the ground and keep on asking for more water, and you have to keep on giving it? Well, that's not the way we put it, but essentially, yeah. There was one requirement that Yachats had placed on their, or one of the many requirements that was placed on their permit, which was to submit a water conservation management plan to the state before they were going to be allowed to get into the river. This was a new thing. They had never required this of any municipalities before, or they've required very few. And this was essentially to show the state that they were doing long-range water planning, and that there was an attempt to conserve water. Because what had happened in the interim, well, two things. The first was the listing of the coho salmon, and the Yachats was coho habitat. So we were getting the attention of the federal government, which of course got the attention of the state, because the state did not want the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to be telling everybody in the state how to manage their business. The state of Oregon had to write a salmon plan, a plan for conserving endangered species within its borders. The other thing, well, let me further get into this further. This Governor Kitzhaber was calling all of his department heads into the office weekly and asking them, what were you doing about salmon? And I guess Water Resources was telling them something. I don't know what they were saying, but they had to say something. And there was now the need to conserve water in the rivers. There was a legal need to conserve water, because if somebody could show U.S. Fish and Wildlife that the state was not upholding its bargain to do something about salmon habitat, there would be the possibility that the federal government would take back this ability to govern the state's waters. So we had that. And we could go to Water Resources and say, hey, you know, you can't grant this right if you're going to be emptying a river which has endangered species in it. So there is this archetypal scenario of you know, anytime somebody wants to do something, the loggers, I mean, you know, there's always the environmentalist out in the brush waiting to jump on them. Well, that was me. And I spent the next 3 years essentially jumping on the city. That every time that they would put out a new iteration of the Water Conservation Management Plan, I would spend months trashing it. And fortunately, it was very easy. The problem was they didn't want to hire somebody to do it, so they got a man in town, a retired engineer, to write this plan for them. And it was a daunting task because this guy had to somehow or another hide the amount of water that was being lost and to project that this was going to be put to a beneficial use down the road. And what it showed up as was, like in 2020, all of the motels were built, and they all had 3 people in every room. And all of the houses were built, and they all had like 5 people in them. And there were huge numbers of people in town, and they were all, every single one of them, consuming 311 gallons of water a day. Go Yachats. It made that fun to trash that. But what really surprised me was I would do my notes on it, which I was going to be submitting to Water Resources, and I would send it out to all the various agencies who had some kind of interest in this. And almost inadvertently, Yachats became a focal point for a lot of water issues. I mean, I got novels back from U.S. Fish and Wildlife and National Marine Fisheries Service. They actually reviewed all these plans and would send back these huge masses of notes about the Yachats water system. I was astounded. I had no idea we were that important. And only later would I find out why. But still, despite the fact that we had absolutely impenetrable reasoning, we had lots of major players on our side, Water Resources was preparing to approve the Water Conservation Management Plan and allow the city to go ahead and withdraw the water without doing anything about their leakage problem.